These are some notes from the 2017 and 2018 Berkshire Hathaway meetings. Warren Buffett said that Charlie quoted Ben Franklin and said that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, but he understated it. An ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure, and I would say a pound of cure promptly applied is worth a ton of cure that's delayed. Problems don't just go away. Then Charlie said, we were very lucky that early we had the habit of buying horrible businesses because they were really cheap. It gave us a lot of experience trying to fix unfixable businesses as they headed downward toward doom. And that early experience was so horrible, fixing the unfixable, that we were very good at avoiding it thereafter. So I would argue that our early stupidity helped us. Then Warren said, yeah, we learned that you cannot make a silk purse out of a sow's ears, so we went out looking for silk. Then Charlie said, but you have to try it for a long time and fail and have your nose rubbed in it to really understand it. Then there was a question. Which business deal was your favorite or otherwise noteworthy? Answer, the one that probably did us the most good is the learning experience with See's Candy. The power of the brand, the unending flow of ever-increasing money with no work. And I'm not sure we would have bought the Coca-Cola if we hadn't bought the See's. The See's Candy. I think a life properly lived is just learn all the time. And I think Berkshire has gained enormously from these investment decisions by learning through a long period. The one feature that comes through is the continuous learning, and if we had not kept learning, you wouldn't even be here. You'd be alive probably, but not here, said Charlie. There's nothing like the pain of being in a lousy business to make you appreciate a good one. Later, an activist gives a critical speech, Warren interrupts, the crowd boos, and then Charlie interrupts. Later, Charlie said, I think we have one other advantage. A lot of other people are trying to be brilliant, and we're just trying to stay rational, and it's a big advantage. Trying to be brilliant is dangerous, particularly when you're gambling. Warren said, accounting is not supposed to describe value. On the other hand, it's a terribly useful tool if understood in order to estimate value if you're analyzing businesses. Okay, moving on to the 2018 Berkshire Hathaway meeting. Warren shows some interesting war headlines from the New York Times in 1942, which were very gloomy, trying to make the point that even amongst the gloom, things got better. Charlie talks about how bad politicians were in the past. Question. Someone asked a difficult question wanting a formula to determine intrinsic value. Answer, well, I can't give you a formulaic approach because I don't use one, and I just mix all the factors, and if the gap between value and price is not attractive, I go on to something else, and sometimes it's just quantitative. For instance, when Costco was selling at 12 or 13 times earnings, I thought that was a ridiculously low value just because the competitive strength of the business was so great, and it was so likely to keep doing better and better. I can't reduce that to a formula for you. I like the cheap real estate. I like the competitive position. I liked the way the personnel system worked. I liked everything about it. And I thought, even though it's 3 times book or whatever it was then, that it's worth more. But that's not a formula that anybody can use. If you want a formula, you should go back to graduate school. They'll give you lots of formulas that won't work, said Charlie. Question. Should Apple spend $100 billion on buybacks or acquiring businesses like you prefer? $100 billion is a lot of money. Answer. I used to think so too. They shouldn't buy their shares at all unless they think they're selling for less than they're worth and they don't see an acquisition that's even more attractive, because I think it's extremely hard to find acquisitions that would be accretive to Apple that would be in the $50 to $100 billion range. They do a lot of small acquisitions, and I'm delighted to see them repurchasing shares. I love to have our 6 or 7% of shares growing without having to lay out a dime. And they're not going to find $50 to $100 billion acquisitions that they can make at a remotely sensible price. They may find it, who knows? We would love to see Apple go down in price. Then he gave the example of 3 partners in a business, and one wants to sell out at 80% of value. If so, he'd take it, but not at 120% of value. Then Charlie said, I think generally speaking in America, when companies go out hell-bent to buy other companies, they're worth less after the transaction is made than before. So I don't think you have a general way to wealth for corporations to go out and buy other corporations. Averaged out, it's a way down, not up, and I think that a great many places have nothing better to do than to buy their own stock, and nothing as advantageous to do as buy their own stock. It's not easy to find acquisitions at good prices. The reason these companies are buying their stock is that they're smart enough to know that it's better for them than anything else, said Charlie. That doesn't mean we approve of every buyback at all, said Warren. No, I think some people will just buy it to keep the stock up, and that of course is insane and immoral. But apart from that, it's fine, said Charlie. A young girl asked a question, why have you been buying more businesses that require a lot of capital like BNSF when you prefer capital-efficient companies like Coke or See's Candy? Why the change? Answer: they're good enough. There's no better alternative. Later, Warren said, every question you get in economics, the next statement or question should be, and then what? On buying things with a track record. Charlie said, if we had been offered a chance to go into Coca-Cola right after it had been invented, we probably would have said no. Warren said, he's right. We don't foresee things that we haven't got a lot of evidence on. We want to see how a consumer product behaves under a lot of different circumstances. Warren said the utility of Chapter 8 in Ben Graham's book in terms of looking at stocks as a business is of enormous value. The utility of Chapter 20 of having a margin of safety is of enormous value, but that's not complicated stuff.